We've got 8-6 suited in the big blind. The hijack min raises to 40. This is an odd amount. The small blind, who's been 3-betting a lot, makes it 120. This is another really small sizing. My sense is that neither player's all that strong. I could easily wait for a better hand to get involved, but on a scale of 1 to 10, that wouldn't be very fun. My image is good since I've only 4-bet with hands at the top of my range so far, and I haven't even 3-bet in some situations that I could have. I take advantage by putting in a cold 4-bet to 400. Usually, we'd want to do this with an ace in our hand. Today, we're living on the edge. This move will look a lot like aces, kings, queens, ace-king, and then some ace-queen or ace-5 through ace-deuce suited occasionally as bluffs. I expect it to get through for me pretty often. It doesn't this time. The hijack calls for 360 more, then the small blind calls for 280 more. This is a rare 4-bet multi-way pot. My perception of the hijack's min raise must have been way off. It might even be trapping with aces. If not, you could have another strong pocket pair like kings, queens, or jacks. Small blind, on the other hand, will probably never have aces. You could have other strong pocket pairs though. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes ace-5-3 with 2 hearts. It's pretty terrible for our actual hand, but it smashes our range, including the hands that we should have been 4-bet bluffing with. What doesn't do well on this flop is the hand that I actually chose to 4-bet bluff with. We've got nothing except a backdoor straight draw. At least any deuce, 4, 7, or 9 will help us improve. Small blind checks. I take a stab at it for 500 like I would if I had aces, ace-5, ace-king, and ace-queen. You saw me also bet this amount in a 4-bet pot with queens on a king-high board previously. My bet doesn't necessarily mean much by itself, but I'm hopeful that this could get most pocket pairs that miss sets to fold. The hijack is thinking for a very long time about what to do. It doesn't seem like he's contemplating a raise. It feels more like he doesn't want to fold a mediocre hand for only 500, but I'm not the only person that he has to be concerned about beating right now. He still has another opponent in the small blind that he has to consider. After a minute of tanking, the hijack calls. There's no reason for him to tank that long with aces if he was trapping pre-flop. You'd think that his decision would be easy, and he'd call somewhat quickly to continue setting the trap. Instead, the hijack at least appeared to be genuinely on the fence about whether to call or fold. I don't think that he's that good of an actor. If he is, he deserves an Oscar for nailing the subtle things that players do when they're making difficult decisions. The hijack might have something like kings or queens, and it's just calling one time for a relatively small amount to see how the rest of this hand plays. Small blind folds immediately. It's down to heads up in a pot that's already large. The turn is the queen of spades, making things very interesting. Again, I can have a ton of strong hands, including aces, queens, ace-queen, ace-5, and ace-3. After seeing my opponent tank when facing a flop bet, coupled with the fact that he didn't 5-bet pre-flop, I've ruled out him having aces and significantly discounted him having ace-king because those are pretty straightforward calls to make on the flop. He probably has ace-queen suited, kings or queens. There are 2 combos of ace-queen suited, and there are 3 combos of queens that the player could have for a total of 5 combinations that'll never fold if I take one more shot as a bluff. Meanwhile, there are 6 combinations of pocket kings that my opponent will have to auto-muck if I bet again. Even if my read on the flop was wrong and the opponent has ace-king, he's not going to like seeing me put more money in the pot because he'd be calling to basically chop at best. There's also some tiny chance that the hijack has a hand like jacks. With 11 total combinations that are the most likely ones that my opponent will have, and me surmising that he'll fold 6 of them, I put in another borderline suicidal bluff attempt, announcing a bet of
1400. Yep. Take the house. What's that? 1400.
It doesn't get much more interesting than this. I'm putting almost everything on the line. If we can win the pot half the time or more, it's a great play because we're risking 1400 to win 2200. I can talk about my reads on situations all day, but in reality, I'd never suggest that anyone put themselves in this position. I've invested 2300 in a hand that I had no real business being in the first place. If I get called here, I'll have 1700 in my stack, and I'll have to shut down on the river. That means I'll be stuck 3300 on the session. I don't have too much time to consider how bad I'll feel if I lose, because the opponent snap folds, we get the Hail Mary bluff through in the clutch. Our line looks like we have the nuts or something close to it, when really, we get lucky to take down a large pot with only 8 high. It's difficult to put into words how relieved I am to immediately get the fold, but you can see my hand shaking as all the adrenaline is coursing through my body. This one gets us above the even mark, and that's where we're going to stay. It's time for the Texas stand-up game. All the players have to remain standing until they win a pot. The last player standing loses and has to pay the other players $50 each. Dev raises to 110 with 10-8 offsuit in an effort to win a seat. Efan, better known as McLovin in prior episodes, calls in the hijack. I hate standing, which is why I chose a profession where I can sit almost 100% of the time. I call with 8-6 suited on the button. 3 of us are seeing the flop and we're in position. It comes 5-4-4 rainbow. We've got another gutter with 2 overs and a backdoor straight draw. Dev never has anything against us, yet he's always betting. He makes it 125. Efan actually has the best hand, which isn't saying much. He folds. I consider raising, but I don't really need to. We call with plans of once again making 5 cards in a row.
There's the 7. And Brad is going to get to take a seat.
It's a beautiful card that gives us a straight, and we pick up a straight flush draw just in case somehow we're no good at the moment. There's no slowing down from Dev. He bets 225. This is the second time we've been in nearly the same situation against the same opponent where we drill a gutter on a paired board in position. The first time we raised the turn, you may remember that I said if we had a flush draw to go along with the straight, we'll flatten those instances. Well, here we have the flush draw. There are way fewer river cards to be worried about, so we call it a trap.
Smooth call here from Brad, going to keep all the bluffs in play for Daddy Dev. A nice move from him, and now connects with the flush.
The opponent has absolutely nothing. Our plan is worked out to perfection. We don't look like we're nearly as strong as we are. This induces a third barrel. The bet this time is for 500. That's a big increase from the turn sizing. When Dev bets all 3 streets, he's representing lots of strong hands, including ones that are better than an 8 high flush. If I raise, I don't think we can get called by much worse. We call with the winner. Dev shows that he has air. We take down a big pot and earn our seat back. We're hitting all the straights today. It obviously has something to do with what I'm wearing. I predict that these Austin, Texas shirts at the airport are soon going to be sold out because they clearly help you run good. We're up nearly 4,000 now. Next we've got 8-6 of clubs under the gun +1. Generally, I'd fold this hand from this position, but most of my friends have left the game who are pros, and I feel like I've got a decent edge on the remaining players, so I'm okay expanding the range. I raised to 30. The player on my direct left calls. We're heads up. The flop comes 8-6 deuce with 2 diamonds. We've got top 2 pair. I chose a good time to deviate from my normal pre-flop strategy. I bet 40 with a hidden monster on a flop that ordinarily won't be great for me. The middle position player doesn't believe that we've got anything too good, and typically he'd be right. He calls this time and is probably in trouble. The turn is the 5 of clubs. It shouldn't have changed much except 9-7, 7-4, and 4-3 make unlikely straights. Plus, we could be up against pocket 5s. There's a better chance the opponent has an overpair, flush draw, or top pair type of hand. I go with a larger sizing of 120 to charge those holdings. When we're strong on boards that aren't supposed to be good for us, I tend to bet more because we'll often get called lighter. The opponent calls again. It'd be great to see a non-diamond high card that doesn't connect with the board. Instead, the river is the 5 of diamonds, completing the flush draw and possibly counterfeiting our top 2 pair. The opponent's holding 9s or 10s. I check. I'll give up if we face a bet. We'd be almost nothing except 9-8, ace-8, pocket 7s types of hands. The middle position player isn't quite sure what to do. He ultimately checks and shows that he has pocket 7s. We reveal that we have the winner and are relieved to have the best hand at showdown given the action in the run out. It's another pot that's coming towards us. We're back up over 1,300 on the session. I switch tables where we've got 8-6 suited on the button. Under the gun +1 raises to 30. He's a good player named Nick, who's been featured in a handful of previous episodes. I've known him for several years. The hijack calls. This is another combo that we should be folding the vast majority of the time under these conditions, but playing this isn't going to lose much money in the long run, especially when there isn't a ton of 3-betting happening from the players behind us. I call to see a flop. 3 of us are contending for the pot. We're in position. The dealer puts out King 8-5 with 2 hearts and a spade. We've got middle pair and some backdoor draws. Pre-flop aggressors naturally want to bet king high flops on dry boards like this one. Under the gun +1 fires for 30 again. The hijack gets no piece of it, as if he was swinging at a Wakefield knuckleball. He folds. There are quite a few cards that can come out that'll help us, plus we're in position getting a good price. I call one time. The turn is the 8 of clubs, giving us trips. It's a dream. The situation gets significantly better for us as the opponent increases his bet size to 150. It's almost the size of the pot. There should be almost no combos that he'll have containing 8s except ace-8, 9-8, and 8-7 at diamonds exactly, because the 8 of hearts, clubs, and spades are all accounted for, and he shouldn't be playing the offsuit versions of those combos. The main hands I'm concerned about losing to are pocket kings and pocket 5s, but that's still only 9 total combos that have us beat at the moment. I call to conceal the strength of our hand and allow the opponent to continue bluffing if he has air. I'll pull the trigger on the next street if we get a good opportunity. The river's the deuce of diamonds. It's the perfect card for us to get max value. Like a lazy Uber driver, I'm delighted that the opponent decides to take himself to Value Town so that I don't have to make the trip right now. He bets 400. It's another huge bet. If he'd only do this with trips or better, there'd be no reason to raise, but the opponent could reasonably think that he has us crushed if he's holding pocket aces, ace-king, or even king-queen, because I would have 3-bet with aces, kings, or ace-king, and I'll sometimes raise turn with trips. If the opponent has aces or ace-king, he should be able to call a raise. I go for it, raising to 1,000 to target rockets and top. Under the gun +1, wasn't expecting to see that. Part of me is still worried that we're up against King's Full, which the opponent knows that I'll never have after just calling the initial pre-flop raise. It doesn't appear as if Under the Gun +1's contemplating a re-raise. If he is, he deserves an Academy Award. It looks like he's genuinely deciding between folding and calling. As more time's passing, I'm feeling better about our hand and rooting hard for a call. About a minute and a half goes by, then the opponent finally mucks.
Good fold,
Nick, good fold.
400, so 600, okay?
Okay. I like Nick, so I let him know that he made the correct laydown. Even though we don't get our raise paid off, we still win a big pot and acquire our first yellow bird of the day. Nick lets us know that he had to make a tough fold.
Ace of clubs, king of hearts. Wow. Nice fold, nice fold.
This pot gets our stack over the 3K mark for the first time today. During the second hand of the stream, we pick up 8-6 suited in the low jack. It's perhaps 1 pip wider than what we should be opening with from this position, but I've got a solid image. I raised to 12,000. By the way, this is my new favorite hoodie at the moment. It's a black waffle knit design from Public Rec. I have a link in the description box below if you want to pick yourself up something from their website. Blake Whittington wakes up with pocket sixes in the cutoff. He's one of those guys I was telling you about who has over 7 figures on Hendon Mob. Blake has some hardware to go along with all that money. He's won a whopping 7 WSOP circuit rings. Blake calls. I mostly put him on a small to medium pocket pair type of hand, as well as some suited connectors and suited broadways. The flop comes 10-4 deuce with 2 hearts, giving us a flush draw with some backdoor straight possibilities. My hand definitely has value, but I don't want to get blown off of it. If I bet now and get called, and don't get there on the turn, I may have to check fold to a bet. If I bet now and get raised, I'm not going to love any of my options because for one thing, I could be up against a better flush draw. I check to get more information from my opponent and keep the pot manageable. One other benefit of checking is that if a heart comes, I'll have somewhat of a hidden flush that could allow me to get more value once we actually get there.
How do you approach these spots, Brent? One overcard, you want to get a bit of protection from the ace-kings, ace-queens of the world?
Yeah, it seems like a fine flop where you're feeling like your sixes are certainly the best hand. And I love what Bradley has done as well with this flush draw. He opted to, I believe, check call with this sort of hand rather than betting, perhaps getting, bloating a pot if you were to get raised on this sort of texture.
Looks like he has come for exactly that. Does check call a bet of 14,000. 67K going to the Queen of Clubs turn. Changes nothing. Pocket sixes of Blake still good. However, an overcard to the board. Those ace queens, king queens of the world now ahead of the sixes of Blake.
Another reason I love what Brad has done thus far in the hand. Let's assume this street may go check right here, and Bradley doesn't improve by the river. The door will be open for him to take this thing away.
We kept the pot small while we had potential but no showdown value. With the 3 of clubs on the river, our potential is all gone, just like Jamarcus Russell, and we still have no value. Also, just like Jamarcus Russell. After a check through on the turn, we got a lot of information from our opponent. Blake will never be checking back with 2 pair or better. He likely doesn't even have a queen, or he might have bet. He's going to have a pair of 10s or worse most of the time. Meanwhile, we can have hands like queen 10, ace queen, some king queen, queen jack hands in our range. There's no way 8 high is going to be good. It's one of the absolute worst hands that I'll ever check call a flop bet with. If we want to win this, we'll need to bluff at it to get hands like 10-9 suited or a pocket pair from 9s down to 5s to fold. That's what we're targeting. We don't need to bet too much to get folds out of those hands. In fact, if we bet somewhat on the smaller side, it'll look like we're trying to get value out of a low to medium strength hand, which might actually induce more folds from a good thinking player like Blake. I bet 27,000 into 67,000 to put our opponent in the blender.
Just textbook for Brad Owen. I love the way he's played this hand. Look at the horrible spot now Blake is in, and he has done nothing wrong in this pot. It's all about what Brad Owen has done right.
27 into 67, around 40%. Really value-ish sizing from Bradley, and it does get through. Bradley sneaking one through on the river up to over 400K. Textbook, I like that.
He's not just a vlogger, Henry. This guy can play ball.
He can indeed.
It feels really good to get a bluff through immediately on the stream in order to keep the confidence up and take some pressure off related to some ancillary objectives like keeping the chat entertained. Probably the best thing that comes from playing on stream is that usually with tournaments, I'm mostly showing the all-in situations when I'm capturing the footage myself on my phone, but with this footage, I'm able to show you the real battles in between those all-ins that are key to having success in MTTs. I'm stuck almost 2,200, I add on for 1,400 more, I'm in for 4,200 total when I'm dealt 8-6 suited in the big blind, the hijack opens to 40. The button calls, it's 30 more for me, I call, we go 3 ways to the flop, it comes Jack 7-5 with 2 clubs, flop an open-ended straight flush draw, oh baby. I check, the hijack continues for 60, the button calls, I consider putting in the check raise, there's so many cards that can help me out, I call in order to wait until I actually hit my hand before inflating the pot. The turn is the ace of clubs, we finally hit a draw today, it only took 6 hours. If you recall 2 hands ago, I led turn as a bluff when the flush draw got there. I'm going to do it here when I actually have it because I don't want it to get checked back. I bet 225, the hijack thinks for a while, then makes the call, the button folds, it's heads up, the final card is the 6 of diamonds, it's a decent one since no additional hands beat me. The entire table saw me bluff river in a similar situation when I only had the nut blocker. Time to make the same play, but this time for value. I bet 600, if I get called, I won't get unstuck, it'll do a lot to get my mindset back where it needs to be though. Ultimately, the player folds, that's the first significant pot that I've won all session. I'd love to stay and play longer, but I have dinner plans, so I rack up.